Welcome to Lesson 7, where we stop using hooks and start building them. The mental model is refreshingly simple. A custom hook is just a function that calls other hooks, starts with the word use, and returns whatever you need. The senior reflex kicks in when you notice the same useState and useEffect pattern copied across 3 components. That's the moment you extract a hook. By the end of this lesson, you'll have 3 canonical patterns in your toolbox: useDebounce, useLocalStorage, and useFetch. Let's map out the 4 mental models that carry this lesson. First, the shape itself, a function prefixed with use that calls other hooks and returns whatever fits. Second, the rule of 3. Copy once, copy twice, but on the 3rd repetition, extract. Third, generics let the caller decide the type, so one hook serves a cart, a theme, or a token. And fourth, the trio you'll write 100 times: useDebounce, useLocalStorage, useFetch. Master those and everything else is just variation. So let's start with useDebounce, the textbook example. The shape is simple. useState holds the debounced value, useEffect schedules a set timeout to update it after the delay, and the cleanup function clears that timer every time the input changes. Notice the generic T. The caller decides whether they're debouncing a string, a number, or a filter object. 10 lines fully typed, and on the right you can see it powering a search input that only fires once the user stops typing. Next up, useLocalStorage. Same idea, different problem. We're mirroring the useState API exactly: a value, a setter, a tuple return. The lazy initializer reads from storage once on mount, wrapped in try-catch, so a corrupted JSON blob doesn't crash the app. The setter accepts either a value or an updater function, just like useState, and writes to storage before triggering the re-render. Cart drafts, theme toggles, recently viewed items, they all collapse into one line at the call site. And now the 3rd in our toolbox, useFetch. Cast your mind back to Lesson 5, where every component carried 30 lines of fetch boilerplate. We extract all of it behind a generic hook. T flows through as the response shape, so useFetch of product array gives you back a typed data field. The abort controller is the senior touch, a fresh controller per effect, aborted on cleanup, so an unmounted component never sets state on a dead request. One line at the call site, and yes, Lesson 8 will replace this with TanStack query. But understanding what you're replacing is the whole point. And here's where it gets interesting. Custom hooks call other hooks. useDebouncedSearch is just useDebounce feeding useFetch, 2 lines of real logic. useCart wraps useLocalStorage and exposes a clean domain API. Add item, remove item, total. This is the senior pattern in one slide. Domain logic lives in named, composable hooks, and your components shrink down to layout. Logic has a name. That's the whole game. Now, before you go composing hooks all over the place, the rules. Same 3 rules as built-in hooks, no exceptions. Top of the function, every render, because React tracks hooks by call order, not by name. Only call them from components or other hooks, never plain helpers, and always prefix with use. That's how the linter knows to enforce the other 2. Keep eslint plugin React hooks on, don't disable it. With the rules in place, here are 6 reflexes that separate a function that starts with use from a hook a senior would actually ship. Wait for 3 sites before extracting. The shape only reveals itself by the 3rd copy. Make it generic so the type flows through. Match useState's shape. Tuple for 2 values, object for many. Keep the call site pure, always return cleanup, and co-locate the types right next to the hook. The hook is the contract. And here's the whole lesson on one page: 12 patterns to keep within reach. The left column is shape, generic signatures, object versus tuple returns, abort controller for cancellation. The middle is discipline, the use prefix, lazy init, debouncing, the stable function reference. The right column is the payoff, tuples, cleanup, persistence, and the rule of 3 sites that tells you when to extract. Screenshot this one. It's the toolbox. Now the flip side, 5 ways good hooks go bad. Premature extraction locks in the wrong shape because you abstracted from 1 example instead of 3. Conditional calls break React's index-based tracking, so always top level, early return the component instead. Mutating a returned object corrupts state silently with no re-render. Forgetting cleanup leaks memory and timers, and dropping the use prefix hides the hook from the linter. The rules stop applying, and the bugs slip through quietly. Time to build. 3 exercises, each landing in your reusable layer. Start with useToggle. 5 lines, returning a tuple of state plus on, off, toggle. Then useCart, composing useLocalStorage with cart operations. This is the actual hook the L12 capstone wires to Fast API. Finally, useDebouncedSearch, where useDebounce and useFetch compose into 1 line at the call site. Tiny, then real, then composed. And that's lesson 7. You've got the prefix rule, the dependency discipline, useDebounce, useLocalStorage, and the instinct to compose. Next up, TanStack query. We'll retire your hand-rolled useFetch and replace it with the senior 2026 default, useQuery and useMutation, stale while revalidate, deduped requests, cache invalidation. Same toolbox mindset, industrial-grade tools. See you in lesson 8.